Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have just an absolutely mind-blowing experience that I'm going to share with you. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment, share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. They are appreciated and they do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's upload, shall we? Yesterday afternoon, I received an email from a new subscriber. And really quick, I just want to emphasize that it is 1:54 a.m. I just got off the telephone with these folks. It is 9:54 p.m. where they live. And received an email from a woman who is a subscriber, new subscriber, and read the email quickly, and it caught my attention because of the way she worded everything. She didn't tell me what happened. She just said, husband and wife, I'm a new subscriber. The experience I need to share with you and get your opinion on happened in 1993 in Alaska, and 95% of it happened to my husband. I was there for the aftermath. So I just said, are you free sometime today to speak with me? And this was like 3 o'clock my time in the afternoon. So it was like early morning for them. Not early morning, but mid-morning for them. And she said, yeah, how about after dinner? I'm thinking dinner time, my time. No, it was dinner time, their time. And so I talked to Anne, and she was kind of the barrier, I guess. She wanted to kind of feel me out before her husband, Greg, got on the phone with me, and we chatted. So about 15, 20 minutes of the conversation happened in 1993 in a national park called Tongass National Park in Alaska. It is right on the coast of British Columbia, and it is huge, absolutely huge. It is roughly the size, this national park is roughly the size of West Virginia. I had never heard of this national park. One, because mainly most of the experiences I've ever gotten or read are in the interior of Alaska. This is far from the interior of Alaska. You are closer to Washington State than Anchorage, or even the interior of Alaska, I guess. It is very interesting. Excuse me. So I speak to Anne for a little bit, and she kind of lets me know what happened. They now, both her and her husband, Greg, live in Ketchikan, Alaska. After Greg had retired, they decided to move up there even after this experience, they lived in South Carolina for the majority of their lives, raised children in South Carolina, but vacationed a lot in Alaska. It was just something Greg fell in love with. Alaska, the fishing, the hunting, and just the wildness of the state. So she kind of feels me out and puts me on hold for a moment. And then I'm introduced to Greg. They are on speakerphone, and both of them are now talking to me. And then Greg just says, you know what? I'm going to go into my office. Anne's going to do some of her stuff that she needs to do right now. But I want to talk to you. And I said, awesome. That sounds great. And so this is 1993, and a little bit about Greg. Greg was 12 years active duty military. And then right after those 12 years, he became a federal law enforcement for the Department of Justice. Now, he enjoyed this job. He enjoyed the military. He liked the structure of it all. And that was the reason why. He emphasized it was not for a power trip. He said, I met too many people in the government that were in it for that power trip. You know, they could have been police officers, but they chose to be federal agents because they had more power than a regular state trooper or whatnot. So really, really nice guy, down-to-earth guy. Now, the year's 93, and they decide to go up to this Tongass National Park, National Forest in Alaska. And Anne he's got some fishing plans. He's going to go fishing in the Hairless River. Anne is going to just hang out in this quaint little town. Very, very quaint and peaceful town. Beautiful, she said. They both said it. And they fell in love with that and had made the decision pretty much that year that when Greg retired, which would have been in 2001, that they were just going to move up there and just kind of relax, because nothing had happened. They had any kind of bad feelings or anything. Greg had been hunting up there prior, fishing up there prior, and nothing. He's seen a couple of these archipelago wolves, which are huge, he said, and beautiful, just majestic creatures. Grizzly bears, majestic creatures. And he ends up, through their time of going up to this location year after year, they'd actually brought their kids up there for vacation. So most people, go to North South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, wherever, Maine. They go up to Alaska in the summers and such. And he ended up meeting a Native American who was Tsimshian Native, and his name was Ejek something. I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce the rest of it, but Ejek. And him and Greg became just great friends. Ejek was a guide, and he had, Greg had paid him many times before to take him fishing, take his kids fishing with him. He did not charge him this trip, and just because they had been such good friends, they'd go out to dinner and such. He was not your regular, guide. Greg started to learn a lot about the culture up there. There's like 3 or 4 different native tribes that live in and around the Tongass National Forest. And they truly believe that this national forest is special. It has something sacred, but there is kind of a danger to this park. So Greg and Ajik go out. It was a Tuesday, and they go out to the Harris River to go fishing. It's just those two, not guide and fishermen, but friends. And they're out there for quite some time. This was before, he said back in 2020 or 2019, there had been some laws that were passed concerning roads, dirt roads, usage of motor vehicles in this park and forest. But they had used some four-wheelers to get out to where they were going to fish. And that was legal at that time. Now it's not so much. Of course, Greg does not go fishing, nor does he go hunting anymore. But he still fell in love with the land up there. So they get up there and they are fishing for quite some time. They had been up at Salmon River a couple days prior, and they just wanted to try their luck here at the Harris River. When probably midday, they kind of hear this really strange noise off into the woods. They're right on the shore of the river. And this forest, like I said, it is the size of West Virginia. So you seeing another person out there is slim to none. Hearing anything abnormal had never happened to Greg or Ajik when they had gone fishing and such. And they hear just this, almost like this kind of laughing roar. And I said, like a laughing hyena? And he said, no. It was more robust and human-like, but kind of feral. Something was dangerous about this noise that we kept hearing over and over again. And they said it was over and over again. It was just, and it became very nerve causing. Of course, they were both armed with pistols. He does not remember what Ajik had, but he had a Taurus loaded with 410 shot in it. And that was something that he had brought with him multiple times. So this repetitive kind of laughter roar would happen each time they'd cast. At one point when they were looking around during that time, and it wasn't like every 10 seconds. It'd be, every 45 seconds, every minute, just whatever. And then there'd be this noise. And once again, they had never heard any kind of noise like this. Ajik had because of certain laws in Canada and how they had to get to Tongass National Forest and up into Ketchikan, they'd have to go through Canada. So he kept his Taurus Judge with Ajik up there. And his friend Ajik told him, keep a 410 and then alternate with a 454 Kasul, and one for smaller predators or to scare away before you have to kill. And because a 454 Cthulhu, they have killed grizzlies with them before. So Greg has not, but people have. So he, at one point, puts his hand on his revolver and starts to look around. And a Jick puts his hand, calm down, calm down. Greg says to him, is it a bear? Is it a grizzly? Have you ever heard of anything like this? And he shakes his head. And he doesn't know why, but it just came out of Greg's mouth. He said, do you think it's a Sasquatch? And a Juk looked at him like his eyes, because they had never talked about any kind of cryptids or any kind of real deep spirituality that Juk's tribe and other tribes around that area have. Just bits and pieces of stuff. And he says something about the old man of the woods. And Greg's like, what the hell's the old man of the woods? And Eject says, what, you? Sasquatch, Bigfoot. And he said, all right, thank you. And, but do you think it is one of these creatures? If that's not a bear, that's huge. Whatever's making this noise is huge. What's your plan? How are we going to get out of here? They kind of wait, and about an hour goes by. It kind of stops. There's no noise at this time. No roarish laughter. And so they resume fishing. And at one point they decide, all right, we've been here long enough. We haven't really had an eventful day other than the noise we've heard. And they are both kind of nerved by it, even though it had stopped. And at one point they both notice how quiet everything had gotten. And they both look at each other and they nod like, yeah, there's now a predator out here. They can hear the river, but they're not hearing much of anything else. And they're not hearing that roarish laughter anymore. So they start to put up all their fishing tackle and everything, and they're going to put it on their four-wheelers and ride out. When all of a sudden they hear this just kind of like roar, this loud, pitchy, but bass to it roar. And it's closer to them now. So they look in that direction and they see trees, just huge trees moving, like something's coming through this forest towards this river. And they both look at each other and they're like, we got to get the hell out of here, because these trees are, 30, 40, 50 feet long, large pine, and they're just rocking back and forth. They get on their four-wheelers and they proceed to this fire road, which I guess you cannot use anymore. And they start riding down this fire road. But where the fire road kind of cuts in is going to be almost where these trees were swaying back and forth. And they both knew that, because there was kind of this look of, whatever happens, keep riding. Get the hell out of here. And they do. So as they get to, I don't know, quarter of a mile down into this fire road, they are miles from any kind of civilization. They get to around this fire road, and there's a tree across the fire road that wasn't there when they came through. So they have to stop. And they're flying. They're, going as fast as a four-wheel quad, like four-wheel drive quad could go. And which is pretty quick, but not as quick as now. I mean, those large quads that Can-Ams and such now can hit close to 80. But back then in 93, maybe 50, 60, maybe, which is still fast as hell. But you're flying and you see a tree in front of you that's wasn't there before. You got to make a quick stop. So they do. They stop and they look at each other like, this wasn't here when we came in a couple of hours ago. They had been there for maybe now 4 or 5 hours. And they're looking at the side if they can go around the tree. But how the tree was laid, it was right into the woods. So there is no way of getting in and around unless they went into the woods deep and then out and around. But once again, you are in a dense, old growth forest, and there is, limited room between these trees. So they get off their four-wheeler and they're like, well, if it fell, maybe we can move the front, the lightest part of the tree, to get in and around it. If we can move it just enough, maybe we can go over it right at the narrowest end. So they're looking at this, and all of a sudden they hear that roarish kind of laughter. And Greg gets that pit in his stomach. They both, at this point now, have both of their handguns drawn and are looking all around them. Like, where was that? That was right on top of us. Prior to, it was loud, but you could tell it was, a distance away. This is right here. We should be able to see it. Where the hell is it? They now know that whatever is making that roarish kind of laughter, that's the best way he can describe it, but it wasn't a laugh. It was how it sounded to him. They are at this front of this tree, so the kind of base of the tree is on this side. They're at the front there, trying to figure out right at the tip, can we get over this? Can we, do we have time to possibly throw a strap around it and pull with one of our four-wheelers or both before whatever this thing is comes out at us? And they make the decision that one of them will stand watch with their firearm out. And if it is whatever kind of creature, bear, whatever, but a Ajik, he said, adamantly that this is not a bear. One of them will keep an eye, and it would be a Ajik. So they do end up figuring out a way of moving the tip of the tree just a little bit so they can get around it. It's still going to be, up and over. It's not going to be an easy kind of exit. As Greg's doing this, as they're getting everything set, Jack is watching everything. He's watching the forest. He's watching behind him on this side of the tree, that side, everywhere. And Greg's just gunning his four-wheeler, and it's loud, and they hear the noise one more time, and it's so loud that it overpowered the noise. He's on his four-wheeler. He said, I could hear it like it was sitting behind me on my four-wheeler. He said, I looked back and there was nothing. And I looked over at my friend and he had a look of terror on his face, but he was looking out away from me, but behind me, just on the opposite side of this tree, but behind me, because I'm pulling this front of the tree away from where we're going to have to go. And he said, I looked over at a Jack and he's got his firearm pointed that way. So he looks, but he can't see anything. He's like, what the hell? Gives it a little more and it moves just enough to where they both knew that they could get around it. But now it looks like he's pointing his firearm in the direction that they're going to have to go. So they're going to have to go around this tip of the tree in that way. And Ajik is pointing his gun that way. Quickly gets off the quad, unhooks this strap thing that off right, just leaves it there. And says, let's go. So Greg goes first. Ajik is right behind him. They get over this thing. Greg's over. And he looks back at Ajik. And Ajik is now like in the middle of this kind of roundabout area to get to the other side. And so he goes like that, go. And Greg punches it, thumbs the throttle. And as he's going, he hears that just evil noise again. But he hears this scream of, fear, pain, and terror. So he stops his four-wheeler and looks, and what he sees, since 1993, up until about 10 years ago, thought this thing was a Bigfoot. He sees his friend kind of stuck between the tip of the tree, these rocks, this kind of rock outcropping that they'd have to go in front of, and this huge kind of creature that he thought was a Bigfoot because of what Ajik had said it was, and the old man of the woods. So immediately he's like, but he's looking at it and he's looking at what's going on, and he's stopped his four-wheeler and he's gotten off of it because he can see something bad is going to happen. As Ajik is going, this thing kind of grabbed him while on his four-wheeler. So the four-wheeler has stopped and it has Ajik by his arms like this. And he said, Ajik was, roughly my height. I'm 5'11". Ajik maybe was a little taller than me, 6 foot, 6'1" max. He said, I'm heavier. I was heavier than Ajik was, but he was a little taller than me. And he said, this thing had him in the air, leveled to his face. They were face to face, and there was a good, another man's height to the ground and then some. He said, I'm guessing this thing was 14 feet, maybe 15. And, it's got what appears to be hair on it, but it does have this kind of nakedness as well. So he gets off of his four-wheeler and he's aiming, but he can't shoot because of where the creature is located. So he's looking at his friend's back, essentially, and he can hear his friend screaming. But he can't see what's going on because all he can see is his friend in the air, his friend's back, and these kind of huge mitts on his arms and, like right up to his shoulders, just huge, he said. So he cannot shoot. There's nothing he can do. He can't see exactly what a Jack is going through. He gets on his four-wheeler and loops back around. Now, as he does this, he says the creature kind of moves a Jack and looks at him. And he said, what this thing looked like, he said it had this human face, but it looked like its nose was flatter, almost like the renditions of cavemen that we see at like national museums and such. But it's just a monster. And when he looks at him, he said, this thing's eyes were just nothing but coal. They were just this dark, blackish gray. And everything that was in those eyes just said evil. And he said, so I looped around, and when it did, and when I could see it, I stopped the four-wheeler. And I pulled my gun up on this thing. And because I had almost a shot. If I could take the shot, I was going to take the shot. Mind you, at this point in his life, he had been with the Department of Justice for like 7 years. So he, plus the 12 years of active military. So he's not a stranger to firearms, plus growing up with rifles and such. So he's like, do I make this shot? And a Jack screams out this, what he believes to be his native tongue, which was Tasimishin, and then says something to Greg and says, Greg, go, or, leave as fast as you can. Just this scream of get the fuck out of here. He didn't say exactly that, but pretty much with that kind of power. But he couldn't leave his friend. This is his friend. They've become more than guide and employer, but they've become very good friends. He's met Ajek's family. Ajek's had dinner with his wife and his, and his own wife. So he's, Greg screams out, I'm not leaving you. I'm not freaking. And as he says, I'm not frigging, he said, I heard this popping noise. And I heard my friend's squeal. It was like this high-pitched kind of pain. And he said, I watched his arms kind of just go out like that. And he said his shoulder just like, it was like tearing a piece of meat. And he knew, because the scream, this just powerful, painful scream stopped abruptly. And the creature had, still had him and took Jack's arm and threw it at Greg. And it landed, 10 feet from him. And now Greg knows that his friend is dead. Or if he's not dead, he's going to be dead. So he makes the conscious decision to shoot. So he makes this conscious decision to shoot. He already knows his friend is dead. Sorry. As he takes his first shot, he shoots, and he isn't thinking. Right after his first shot, he realizes that's the 410. Oh shit. Because all he saw was just nothing. It was almost like it didn't affect him, this creature. But he took a Jex and threw it through his body like it was just someone throwing a piece of trash, or a garbage bag. It was that's how easy it was, like it was nothing. And that's when he got a full shot of what this thing looked like. And he said, I've always thought that, or for, up until X amount of years ago, I always thought this thing was a Bigfoot, just based on what a Jack said. Even after everything that, the aftermath of all of this, because that's what he was led to believe. So as he's just seen this thing toss his best friend, he now has that 454 Casull shot, but then it's a 410 right after. But he takes that shot and he said, I hit it center mass in the chest. I hit another 410 and then I hit it with another center mass right in the chest. He said it kind of buckled back a little. He said he opened it up. There was just blood. But what he said he saw, he said it looked just like those renditions of these Cro-Magnon Neanderthal creatures. It had that flat primate-like face, but very hair, not as much hair as an actual primate, but less hair than, or more hair than we have, almost right in the middle. But it appeared to have what looked like some sort of clothing on. Because when he was assessing the situation, he's like, I have one more round and it's a 410. I've got to get on my quad and go. I've got to leave my best friend's body here. And I've got to at least 3 miles before I can get to our truck or a Jex truck and get the hell to Ketchikan. So that's what he does. He just races down this trail. He turned but to look to see if this thing was following him, but it did not. After that 2 shots, it kind of rocked. To this day, he still was amazed by the way it took those shots, because as he's going away from it, it's not chasing him, but it turned back to a Jex body, and it started to take its anger or rage from being shot out on this man's poor body, and he's just now flying down this trail. As he's probably a mile away from everything that just occurred, he hears these kind of howls off in the distance, and he's like, what the hell is that? Like, I'm on my 4-wheeler, I am flying. What? I wouldn't be able to hear, is it that creature? Is it, wolves? But it's far too loud to be a wolf. Yes, it's, wolves can be loud, and that echo, you can hear it, but something was about it. And he looks behind and there's nothing behind him, and he just keeps going. And he said, I probably made it another 200 to 300 feet when out of my peripheral vision, on one side, I saw this thing kind of running through the woods, and it was going in front of me. It was running faster than I was going on a four-wheeler. And whatever it was a quadruped, and it was running toward the woods, so it was going to cut in front of him. And he looks on this side, and there's another one. And they are about neck and neck and ahead of Greg at this point. So it looks like they're going to come in the middle of this fire road and cut him off. And as sure as shit, that's what happens. They stop, and these two creatures stand up on their hind legs. And he said, what I saw that was, I thought they were these archipelago wolves that at that point in 93 were being reintroduced because there had been a decrease in their population. He said, but when these things stood up, I knew that they were not wolves. I instantly thought of the movie Wolfen, and holy shit, these things are real. Werewolves are real. He now knows that what he saw was Dogman. One was a grayish black, and the other was this kind of brownish red. He said the one that was grayish black appeared to be what he could see younger, a little younger than the brownish red one. He made the conscious decision he's not going to stop, because if he stops, these things are going to be right on him. He makes the decision. He's on an all-terrain four-wheeler, so it's got a brush guard, but it is not like a brush guard that you'd put on a Land Rover or a Land Cruiser, but it's a quad brush guard. And he's like, I'm just going to fucking hit one of these things and go right through them. That's my best bet to get out of here. And as he's going, the blackish gray one realizes that he could see this kind of click in its eyes that, this guy's going to hit me. And it drops down to all fours and runs just to the side. The reddish brown one is now standing, and Greg just goes kind of right between the two, one quadruped, one biped. And he proceeds to just haul ass. A good minute goes by, and he looks behind him to see what is going on, if this thing's chasing him or if these things are chasing him, and he doesn't see anything. It's like night and day. A minute on his four-wheeler going 55, 60 miles an hour. And these things, stopped chasing him. So he's like, all right, I'm good. He gets to his truck, and there's a trailer for both four-wheelers, but he's got one. And he says, and he leaves the four-wheeler there, jumps in the truck, and remembers at that point, as he jumps in the truck, he goes to put his hand in his pocket to get the key. But he's like, this isn't my truck. This is a Jick's truck. What the? He left the key in the truck because there's no one up there. So a Jick left the key in the truck. He starts the truck and hauls ass back to Ketchikan. When he gets to Ketchikan, he immediately is trying to contact the police, the city police, the state police, other higher up, park rangers, game wardens, and he tells them what happened. Now they're looking at him like he's got 6 heads. They see his pistol on his hip, and they're probably thinking he doesn't know, but he said just based on their eyes and, you know, everything else, they don't trust me. You know, I got this gun, and they don't believe me. They probably think that I killed my friend. They go up, they ask, you know, all right, this is where it is. He said, yes, this is exactly what happened. This is how minute by minute for the day. We came to this thing grabbed a Jack. And then these 2 werewolves ran in front of me. I had no choice but to plow into it if I was going to. I didn't hit it, but I was going to plow into it. They, the 2 city police make a phone call. Park ranger comes down, and luckily a Alaskan state trooper is in the area on an assist for a whole different case. And 35 minutes later, after Greg has called his, wife at the bed and breakfast thing that they were staying at to let her know, hey, there's some shit going on. I'll call you when we're back, here at the police station. I'd really like to see you. I kind of need you, but I got to do this right now. They get out there and they don't see any werewolves. They get to the large tree that is across the road, and they have to stop. And Greg's pointing, that's where a Jack is. That's where his body is. I'm not getting out of this car. That's where his body is. I don't see that thing that killed him, but go check it out. So he has no plan on getting out of the vehicle. But he remembers, I was right about here when I fired my shots. Jack's arm was somewhere on this road right about here. I didn't see us hit it, and I'm guessing that the police weren't going to hit it. And he did get out of the car. Because now he remembers, hey, I didn't tell you, but his arm should be right here, because when I had the time and clear shot, I took it, but his arm, like partial shoulder to chest was just ripped, was here. His body's right, should be right there. Lo and behold, they call him, and he walks over, and they can see his body, and they see the mangled mess that his friend's body was in. They're like, we have to get it in one of our vehicles and bring his body back into town. And they hear this kind of rumbling in the woods. It sounded like growls, like a dog growling, but kind of like a very strange growl. Not like that growl laughter or roar laughter, but this sounded very similar to a dog. And they all look just past Jack's body, where this creature, this 14 to 15 foot tall creature should be. And they look into the woods, And they're all, and one of the, he thinks it was the state trooper or the park ranger that came up, said, "Holy shit, what is that?" He knows that it wasn't the Ketchikan City police, because they were kind of, he used a word to describe them that was not very nice. It was started with a P and ended with a Y. But they, they're not used to seeing all this. What they see is they see these two dogmen dragging this 15-foot creature. Like, one has its arm under, like almost like a military kind of GI move and assist. Like, arm is under here on one side and they're dragging this thing. And he looks at everybody like, am I the only one seeing this, or are you guys seeing this? Because I don't want you guys thinking I, killed my friend, and I don't want to be in jail. I'm a federal freaking, employee. And they all see it. And, they're like, what the fuck is that? Here you've got two huge canine-like creatures. You only can see the back sides of them, but you can see tail, like about a 2-foot tail on each of them, dragging this just monstrous man-like creature. And it's not moving. It's not, doing anything. They're just dragging its body away from this area. They get Jack's body, they put it in one of the SUV cruisers and head back into Ketchikan. At that point, his wife is already at the police station. Anne is at the police station waiting for Greg. He's questioned extensively, probably a couple hours. They'd say, don't go anywhere. We want to talk to you the next day. They contact his superiors and let him know, this is what happened. He doesn't know if they said, we saw these two dogmen dragging this freaking huge giant-like creature through the woods. But, one of his friends was tragically killed in the woods, probably a grizzly bear. He doesn't get any more questioned after that. Kind of like, what's your plans? We're going to, medical examiner needs to look at this before you even go anywhere. But we have contacted your supervisors and your superiors, and they know, and they are, waiting for you to be back into South Carolina, yada yada. And he's all right. So a couple days go by, medical examiner's report comes back. It's deemed not a homicide. Tragic grizzly bear mauling. And he's just baffled. Him and his wife fly back to South Carolina. At that point, the rest of his vacation is spent at his home. He goes into the office, and as he's walking in to scan his card to go further into the building, he's stopped right there. He is escorted into a debriefing room. There's two armed military kind of MP guards walking with him on one side. So he's like, I'm in deep shit here. Why are there two guys in full body suits? And they say to him, we heard about everything. We heard about the incident. What you need to know is there are a lot of these attacks, but it was a grizzly bear. What did you see? And he told him. And at that point, they said, listen, just go with, it was a grizzly bear. They don't threaten him. They don't make him sign any NDAs. They just, say this, move on. We're sorry about your friend. But feel appreciative that, it's not just him. You didn't get killed either. At this point, he is up until 2015 thinking that this was a Bigfoot and those other creatures were werewolves. And then his eyes were opened by some videos that he had seen on a couple of different, not cryptid channels, but religious conspiracy channels. And he's just, he can't cope with this, but he realizes, holy shit, after watching a video on these, religious, is this a Nephilim from Anak, or is it Bigfoot? Because every story I've ever heard about a Bigfoot, they are hairy. This thing was not hairy, but it didn't look like me or you or this or that, but it looked very Neanderthalic, inbred, almost inbred. And as he is learning more about Bigfoot and Dogman and this and that, he hears more on the Book of Enoch, and interbreeding did exist and go hand in hand with these giants and such. That it was just so. Was that a Nephilim? It looked interbred. Or was it a Bigfoot? Well, he said, what do you think? And I said, I don't think it was a Bigfoot. I don't think it was a Bigfoot. I couldn't say, definitely an Nephilim. I said, what you saw was more than likely Dogman. Not a werewolf, a Dogman. But as far as this Nephilim, Bigfoot, I don't know. What do you think? And I left it at that, because it's his decision to come up with what he thinks, because he's the one that had to live through that and still live through it every day and process it on a daily basis. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. And like I said, I am exhausted, but I wanted to get this out because, and he's still, now, after he retired, him and his wife, Ann, bought a house in Ketchikan. And they live there, never going into the woods. But because he fell and she fell in love with the beauty of the area, that's where they are. And like I said, I started recording this at 1:45. It was 9:45 at that point. It's 3 right now. So it's 11 there. And I am exhausted. Wow. But, here's something to think about. Why did those two dogmen drag that creature back with them. Well, if it was a Nephilim, who's to say that the Dogman wasn't created by the Nephilim when instead of breeding with women, they bred with animals? We already know, we've heard stories of these creatures breeding with animals, doing kind of these strange experiments. The fallen angels doing strange experiments. Since when did fallen angels learn, become scientists to do strange experiences? Because they're demons, they're demonic, It's absolutely saddening. Absolutely saddening. All right, and with that, like I said, I just got off the phone. I wanted to get this out to you guys before I got sleep. I wanted to get it out right when it was fresh, right with my notes. And once again, Greg and Ann are not their names. And like he said, it'd be difficult to figure out who said this because there are so many other employees for the Department of Justice and during that time as well. So, and with that, I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. After all, it is your support that keeps this channel growing and going, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our theories and ideas, judgment-free. Just everyone's treated with the respect that we all deserve. And that's because of you. Thank you. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there, and they are dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, because it might just save their lives. Never stop asking questions, and never stop searching for the truth. And God bless you all. Fucking crazy. Wow. Absolutely crazy.